You're listening to The Corridor, presented by Threshold. To learn more and support our work, go to thresholdpodcast.org.
Cafe de Monde, baby! We got 3 beignets covered in powdered sugar. So pillowy and soft.
Welcome to The Corridor. I'm Jaha Naila Avery, and as you can hear, I'm at Cafe de Monde, one of the most famous places in New Orleans.
I gotta knock some of this sugar off though. It's just so much sugar. It's literally like a half an inch a layer of just caked powdered sugar.
Beignets, if you haven't had one, are pillowy square donuts topped with a mountain of white sugar. Cafe de Monde has been selling coffee and beignets in the French Quarter since 1862.
But what's so funny is they give you these tiny little glasses of water. You need more than that because this sugar is just like out of control. But it's so good!
The sugar served here is from Louisiana. Sugar's a major commodity in this state. And not far from Cafe de Monde is another landmark to sugar, one that most visitors to the French Quarter likely miss. I'm standing in a very interesting spot because I have the French Quarter right in front of me and the mighty Mississippi behind me. And we're actually facing a marker that is dedicated to the transatlantic slave trade to Louisiana. This spot, just steps from Jackson Square, is where thousands of enslaved people entered Louisiana, starting around 1718. Many of those people would end up working on sugarcane plantations outside New Orleans. But their journey started right here in the French Quarter. Although this spot is very, when you think of the French Quarter, people think of debauchery, they think of the hurricane, drink, and maybe actual real hurricanes. But really, a little over 200 years ago, had we been standing here, we would have seen hostages kidnapped from Africa being forced off of slave ships onto this very space and taken to slave pens throughout the French Quarter and sold at public auction. In the 19th century, Louisiana's prosperity depended on sugar, and sugar depended on slavery. In our last episode, we heard about how petrochemical plants along the Mississippi are mapped out almost perfectly onto former plantations. From the perspective of a lot of people I talked to here, these two industries have more than just borders in common. In this episode, we're going to explore the story of the first industry that exploited people here and how that history connects to what's happening here today. Before petroleum, chloroprene, and benzene, there was sugar. There's no place in this country like Louisiana. You already know that if you've ever been here and gone to a drive-through daiquiri stand. But the history you learn here in Louisiana really depends on who's telling it.
Louisiana sugar started on a plantation in New Orleans more than 200 years ago and has come a long way since then. It's natural, it's healthy, it's good.
At St. Joseph Plantation, this jingle was part of a video shown before the tour.
Sugar cane, sweet sugar cane, the sweetness of our southern trees. Sugar cane, sweet sugar cane.
Neither the video nor the tour itself even mentioned the enslaved people who were trapped on this plantation. Fortunately, there are places that do tell this story.
For enslaved people who were working that sugarcane, it's extremely hazardous.
This is Joseph Dunn, Director of Marketing at the Laura Plantation in St. James Parish.
Sugarcane leaves are razor sharp, so they had to be covered from their head to their fingertips so they wouldn't get sliced up by the leaves. And inside those fields, you're going to have all kinds of rodents. You have poisonous snakes.
Although cotton was king across much of the South, in the 19th century, Queen Sugar ruled the river parishes. It's why the Laura Plantation is here. The Laura is one of many historic plantations open for tours in this area, but with one big difference. The Laura focuses on its French Creole heritage. Creoles were a distinct cultural identity in Louisiana, defined by native birth, the French language, and Catholicism. On one of my visits, nearly everybody was speaking French. But like the other plantations here, it, too, is an opulent estate made possible by sugar and slavery.
So a lot of people are surprised when they come to visit with us that there's no cotton. Well, this is not a cotton place. Everything south of Baton Rouge, along the Mississippi River, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico once upon a time, was all sugarcane fields.
Sugarcane is a tropical plant. It looks kind of like bamboo crossed with corn. Its tall stems are filled with sweet nectar that's processed into the sweet treat we know and love. Harvesting sugarcane is incredibly labor-intensive.
When harvest time comes, that's going to start late September, early October. The enslaved people would have been divided into work groups. So you can imagine women, young adolescents, 12, 13 years old, big enough physically to swing a cane knife. And they're grabbing the cane with their left hand and they're cutting the cane with their right hand as close as they can to the ground.
Enslaved men, women, and children worked around the clock during harvest time.
Do you recall having watched your mother do sugarcane?
Oh, yes, I worked in the field with her.
This is an oral history interview with Miss Georgiana Williams-Jack, who remembers cutting sugarcane as a little girl in Louisiana in the 1920s, much the same way they did it in the 1800s.
I was young, and I tried to go help her. I was too young to play with a cane knife, those big cane knife.
Yes,
I had a butcher knife, and I would flag the cane, and she would top them.
When you say flag the cane,
You
what does that
see,
mean?
you get the flag off the cane. You see, the cane's got flag.
Okay.
If
Is
you-
that like the leaves?
Yes,
on it?
but it's long, you see, and if you don't watch yourself, you get cut.
Once harvested, sugarcane has to be processed immediately. Every plantation had a sugar mill on site to crush, heat, and boil the juice from the stem. It was basically a refinery in the field. Here's Joseph again describing the boiling process.
There's a whole series of giant iron pots. There are usually 3, sometimes 4 of them that are in different sizes. So they start in the largest pot and they work through a process of evaporation and reduction down to the smallest pot, which means that they are having to lift this boiling sugarcane juice and pour from one pot to the other. Injuries there are also very, very common because if there's an accident, if there's a slip, boiling juice is poured on people, so people are burned.
The sugar mill, with its billowing black smoke and nauseatingly sweet smell, was usually located right beside the slave quarters. Enslaved people lived their whole lives in its shadow, the most dangerous place on the plantation. It wasn't just Louisiana or the South that benefited from this system.
We want things to be in pretty boxes. The North is abolitionist, the South is slaveholding, but it's northern banks who are holding lots of mortgages for enslaved people who are financing the trade.
Slavery was big business for people all over the world, even for those who didn't enslave people personally. Northern banks provided financing for Southern plantation owners to buy equipment, land, and people. And many other parts of the world economy relied on the trade of products produced with enslaved labor.
Sugar was like liquid gold, right?
This is Dr. Jessica Marie Johnson, Associate Professor of History at Johns Hopkins.
Louisiana slave owners were often looking to places like Saint-Domingue, present-day Haiti, looking to Cuba, where sugar was the cash crop.
These were the sugar colonies that drove European expansion in the New World. By the 1700s, sugar had become the most important traded commodity on the planet. but it took longer for Louisiana to enter that global market.
The problem in Louisiana has always been that the climate causes frosts in the winter that occur too early for the sugar cane to take hold, right? So the kind of sugar that gets harvested and refined in Louisiana is just not of the same quality, so it can never really compete on the global market.
Things began to change for Louisiana in the 1790s, though. A powerful revolution in Haiti abolished slavery and destroyed a big piece of the global sugar supply. Some expert sugar makers fled Haiti and settled in Louisiana. One of them, a free man of color named Antoine Marin, helped make the first granulated sugar in the state. All of these developments gave wealthy planters an opportunity.
The sugar slave owners who are able to make sugar cane take hold are able to make a significant profit in the market. It is gangbusters.
The most successful planters were also the most industrial, using high-yielding varieties of sugarcane, incorporating steam engines, railroads, and conveyor belts, and burning cane stalks to power the mill. Some of them organized enslaved people into 6-hour shifts during harvest time. Planters focused relentlessly on efficiency, feeding the byproducts of industry back into the sugar-making process.
In 1843, Norbert Rioux, who was actually a free man of color, invented the vacuum pan that essentially is the kind of technology that allows for sugar cane processing to go easier.
This method of boiling cane juice with steam and recycling that steam at each step produced Louisiana's finest sugar yet, chemically pure and bright white. Rioux's process, called multiple effect evaporation, didn't just work for sugar. It's useful for all kinds of industrial processing and is used by plants up and down the corridor to this day. But even with these technological advancements, sugar planters still needed labor, and lots of it. And for that, they turned to another big business in Louisiana: slave trading.
The number of enslaved people who are moving through New Orleans is massive. They're going to be sold at one of the many markets or by one of the many agents in the city. New Orleans slave market is feeding the enslaved population across much of the South.
The seaport and river made the city an ideal place for exporting cotton, sugar, and other goods made with enslaved labor. Those same waterways also brought people to be bought and sold. Jessica says that before the Civil War, New Orleans was the busiest slave market in the nation. By the 1800s, 1 in 3 people in the city was enslaved. And when you walk by the old buildings in the French Quarter, you're walking through this history.
The trade itself, the actual economics and the market, the Wall Streetness of slavery was a critical piece of the city's architecture, its geography, and much of its wealth and finances. So that even though most of the enslaved people who are coming to New Orleans are actually moving out beyond the city and even beyond Louisiana, that slave market is a critical piece of New Orleans' experience. It's the reason the Quarter exists, the reason the Quarter was able to become what the French Quarter is.
Slave traders kept enslaved people in pens in buildings throughout the French Quarter. They brought them to auction at commercial centers called exchanges, some of which were located in fancy hotels. Among the most famous and beautiful was the St. Louis Hotel and Exchange. 6 days a week, humans were sold in the lobby there. You can still go to that lobby today. It's in the Omni Royal Hotel. People sold in New Orleans ended up enslaved all over the South and even further west, many on cotton plantations. But some ended up in the river parishes, where they entered a brutal hierarchy of forced labor. And even if they had experience on another plantation, it didn't help much when it came to sugar, which was much more industrial.
If somebody stole from Virginia, they don't grow sugarcane there, nor is a cotton, tobacco, or rice plantation an agro-industrial complex. It doesn't require a factory. So they don't have skills in any of those things. They're typically purchased for general farm labor.
This is Stephen Mistretta, a site interpreter at Oak Alley Plantation in St. James Parish. Today, Oak Alley is a major tourist attraction, but in the 19th century, it was a factory farm for sugar. I met up with Stephen by the reconstructed cabins of Slave Row. The people who once lived in these cabins kept the operation running day and night.
Between 110 and 120 people. That's the amount of people to efficiently run the plantation. You have a 2-to-1 ratio men to women. You have a 2-to-1 ratio unskilled men to skilled men on the plantation also.
People did all kinds of jobs besides growing and cutting cane.
Teamsters, blacksmith, carpenter, something like that. Well, typically, slaves that are born here, they speak the language of the planter, and so they'll be the ones who are trained on more skilled jobs.
Skills tended to pass down through families.
But typically, children live parallel lives to their parents. So it starts with what the father is. Skilled fathers have skilled sons. The start apprentice age for skilled labor is about 11 to 13. Now, before that, they'll know the cultivation of sugar before that because that's a less dangerous job. And so maybe by the time they reach 8 or 9, they might know how to cultivate the plant.
Everything revolved around one building, the sugar mill.
The mill is the central location of the plantation, not the big house. It is the most important building. If you don't have somebody who can work it, you don't have a sugarcane plantation.
Enslaved laborers did work at all levels of the operation, from cutting stalks to boiling cane juice. And the person in charge of the mill, the most important job, was often an enslaved man.
Every plantation is going to have a sugar maker, or possibly more than one. Those people are the most highly valued. They're the ones who make and break the plantation, more than anybody else. They know what it takes to make cane into sugar.
That person also had to know chemistry, inside and out.
You have to have the eye for it. You have to be able to see the changes. You have to boil the juice at the correct temperature for the correct amount of time to where the juice will become syrup, and the syrup becomes molasses, and then the molasses granulates into raw sugar. So you have to know when's the right time to move it from kettle to kettle, and when you have to stop the fire so where it can granulate down.
One wrong move and the cane juice scorches or turns into hard candy.
What you want is granulated sugar, not molasses, nor do you want candy. The real gold is with granulated sugar.
White gold. Americans and Europeans couldn't get enough of it, and that demand transformed the river parishes. Kettles from the old mills are still a common sight in this area. The largest are about the size of a hot tub, and nearly every plantation has at least one on display. It's a constant reminder of the commodity that shaped the world.
Once they stopped using them in the mills, people started using them to decorate their yard. As a matter of fact, they make them out of fiberglass today. People want to decorate their yard with it.
You heard right. You can now buy a synthetic sugar kettle made from petrochemicals. These kettles are leftovers from a brutal system. Enslaved adults and even children worked near open flames, boiling cane juice and grinding rollers. They poured red-hot juice from one kettle to the next with ladles. Accidents and injuries were common. People were cut by cane knives, dragged and crushed between grinders, burned by exploding boilers, and scalded by churning kettles of cane juice. And on top of all that, speed mattered. Sugar planters wanted efficiency. Cane had to be cut, crushed, and boiled as fast as possible. As the scale and profit increased, so did the suffering.
Because the pace is so grueling, the level of brutality rises to meet that pace, right? So the power that slave drivers had, the kind of brutal whippings, the brutal kinds of punishments, the punishment for running away, all of these are at intense levels in order to keep control of the enslaved population, to keep the enslaved population moving, to keep them working at a pace that is incredibly inhumane.
Conditions were so severe and injury and death so common that there was a constant demand for more labor. The death rate on a sugarcane plantation exceeded the birth rate.
And then there's also just the kind of everyday inhumanity of slavery. So enslaved people also describe having to, literally like squat and give birth in the field, having to work the cane, cut cane all the way into them giving labor, knowing that you literally have to work until you drop is part of the kind of terror of slavery that enslaved people experience.
In the era before widespread fossil fuel use, the energy being used to make consumer goods faster and cheaper was the life force of human beings.
It's not a life that you want to live. It's not a life that was sustainable. Life does not last long in sugar plantations.
In 1808, the United States banned the importation of enslaved people, making the transatlantic slave trade illegal. This created what historians have called the Second Middle Passage. People who had been in the United States for generations were uprooted from other parts of the country and brought to Louisiana.
I think we can say that in a lot of hindsight, for enslaved people to be sold to the sugar plantations is like the worst kind of experience that you can have.
The difficulty of the work wasn't the only thing that made it hard. Here's Stephen from Oak Alley again.
It's going to be hard for a bunch of reasons because it's a culture shock. You're moving from an area that's, first of all, English-speaking to French-speaking, from Protestant to Catholic, from cotton to sugarcane, from whatever environment they got up there to tropical.
Louisiana had been a French and Spanish colony for 2 centuries, a history that profoundly shaped the region. I can imagine what this would have been like for my own family. My ancestors were enslaved on a cotton plantation in eastern North Carolina. They spoke English, followed the traditions of the Baptist Church, and had their own local traditions. Had one of them been sold to Louisiana, it would have been a huge change.
The Louisiana and New Orleans route is a special nightmare for enslaved people in this moment. And being sold away to the South broadly is especially terrifying because there is the understanding that you will probably never see that family, that multi-generational family again if you are sold. It's the uncertainty that is as terrible as the sale itself, and the lack of control and autonomy over your future, over your body, over who is going to have control over you. That's one of the hardest parts of the enslaved experience.
Everyone knew that being sold to Louisiana was basically a death sentence. This is from an account by Jacob Stroyer, an enslaved man born on a plantation outside Columbia, South Carolina. He's remembering the moment his sisters were sold down to Louisiana. Louisiana was considered by the slaves as a place of slaughter, so those who were going did not expect to see their friends again. Some were yelling and wringing their hands, while others were singing little hymns that they were accustomed to for the consolation of those that were going away. When we all meet in heaven, there is no parting there. When the cars began to start, the colored people cried out with one voice, as though the heavens and earth were coming together. As the cars moved away, we heard the weeping and wailing from the slaves, as far as human voice could be heard. From that time to the present, I have neither seen nor heard from my 2 sisters, nor any of those who left on that memorable day. If you've heard of one person sold to Louisiana, it might be Solomon Northup, a free black man who was kidnapped from New York and sold into slavery. In his 1853 book, 12 Years a Slave, he detailed his time on cotton and sugar plantations. Here he is describing the harsh conditions inside one sugar house. The grinding and boiling does not cease, day or night. The whip was given me with directions to use it upon anyone who was caught standing idle. If I failed to obey them to the letter, there was another one for my own back. I had no regular periods of rest and could never snatch but a few moments of sleep at a time. We know that people all over the country knew about the brutality of sugarcane plantations because Northup's book was a bestseller, and he became a sensation on the abolitionist lecture circuit. But even though people knew the human cost to making sugar, they still wanted it. The global demand for sugar only grew in the 19th century. By the 1850s, a quarter of the global sugar supply came from Louisiana. Louisiana became the second richest state. The cornerstone of that value lay in the enslaved people held hostage on these plantations. Black people provided the skills and the labor for the industry, and in return, they suffered and died.
It's not a lot of time. It's not a full life. And it wasn't expected to be. Slave owners did not invest in creating families. They are invested in having able bodies that can harvest the sugar and maintain the sugar processing. Sugar is made with blood.
Despite all the suffering and lack of control over their lives, enslaved people here still had families. They formed communities and connections to the land. And many of the people you meet here in the corridor today are descendants of those same families. We'll have more after this short break.
Sometimes you just need a moment in nature. And the Points North podcast has you covered.
Okay, check 1, 2, all right. Rolling.
You can listen to top-notch stories that sink deeply into the natural world, with moments of surprise.
It's amazing. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I thought this was a pear. This is an absolutely crazy apple tree.
Moments of wonder.
When a plant opens its bloom, it's kind of like it's opening its eyes in a way, right?
It's like you're talking to a bird.
Oh yeah, it gives me goosebumps every time.
And moments of calm, where you can just slow down. Get your nature fix. Listen to Points North. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Water temperature is pretty nice. All right, wish me luck. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Doug Parsons, host of America Adapts. I often say climate adaptation is the greatest story never told. Every day, people are finding new ways to prepare for heat, floods, wildfire, rising seas, insurance challenges, and so much more. But most of those stories never make the headlines. That's why I created America Adapts. With more than 250 episodes, I interview the experts, innovators, and practitioners helping communities navigate a changing climate. Because climate adaptation isn't just our future, it's already happening.
If you are a Black person with roots a couple of centuries in this particular place, then your folks were enslaved. I had several of these plantations.
Welcome back. I'm Jaha Naila Avery, and this is Dr. Joy Banner, co-founder of the Descendants Project, an organization that advocates for Black communities with generational ties to slavery in the river parishes.
Where were your ancestors enslaved?
At Whitney Plantation in Wallace, and then Laura Plantation, and then we're finding some that were maybe in a couple other plantations in St. James, so a little bit west of where my hometown is.
Joy grew up nearby, and like many people here, she lives only a few miles from the plantations where her ancestors were enslaved. Unlike other people here, though, Joy herself is a plantation owner.
I don't diminish or don't shame or don't blame any Black person who's saying, I don't want to go on the plantation, but it's our right to go into a plantation if we want to.
In 2024, the Descendants Project purchased the place we're standing in today, Woodland Plantation in Laplace, Louisiana. The house is mostly empty on the day I visit, our voices echoing across the bare wooden floors.
This has become our storage room. Like this room, I think at one point was a porch, and then they had...
In the home's more than 200-year history, it has never had Black owners, until now. Joy was drawn to this plantation by something that happened here in 1811, the largest slave uprising in American history. Joy walks me into one room.
So the first blows would happen in either of these two rooms, and there's an upstairs part, so it could have happened there. Reading about the 1811 slave revolt and then like going in the yard or going on a porch and reading about the 1811 slave revolt is quite a different experience.
The uprising began on the night of January 8th, 1811. An enslaved driver named Charles Deslon led a group of about 25 people into the house at Woodland, where they attacked the planter and killed his son. Seizing weapons and militia uniforms from the house, they headed south to New Orleans. This was a well-coordinated and organized revolt, and it wasn't just about this one plantation. It was about destabilizing the institution of slavery. Many of the rebels had fought in the successful independence movement in Haiti a decade earlier. Others had fought in civil wars in Africa. Their goal was to capture New Orleans and establish a free black state. Joy is still looking into whether her ancestors were actually involved.
I wonder, how far the conspiracy, how well known was it over both sides of the river, and how much was the underground network contributing to the rebellion? Were there people who were smuggling weapons or goods or passing along information from the east to the west bank? What did that spy network look like?
As the rebellion advanced, they confiscated horses and weapons. They gathered supplies. At every stop, they were met with cheers and excitement. By late afternoon on January 9th, they'd traveled 25 miles, and more than 500 people had joined the rebellion. New Orleans was within reach. But Deslon and his followers never made it to the city. A group of American militia and planters descended on the uprising. Dozens were killed, including Deslon. It came to a brutal end. The heads of about 100 of the participants were put on poles running 60 miles along the river road, the road that still runs through the corridor to this day. Even though the rebellion wasn't successful in taking New Orleans, Joy finds inspiration in the fight.
I think they were fighting more for the liberation of the generations coming after them. I think that was their biggest prayer for freedom for all of us collectively and their future generations.
From the ashes of this revolt rose many other uprisings, not just in Louisiana, but all over the South. Word spread from plantation to plantation, with the name Charles Deslon whispered on slave rows everywhere. Today, the story of the uprising isn't well known outside of this area, despite being the largest of its kind in American history. The existential threat to white power led planters and politicians to downplay the revolt, including the skill and coordination of its leaders.
And this history is traumatic, yes, but it's hella interesting. We as Black Americans, especially in small communities like mine, we have the most compelling stories.
Joy grew up just across the river from Woodland Plantation in Wallace, Louisiana, surrounded by her family and its history. Wallace is a free town created by and for newly freed people after the Civil War.
My neighborhood was founded by my great-grandparents. And so it's about 125 years old. And so my neighborhood and my community is my family.
Many of these free towns were located right on the edges of plantations where residents had formerly lived and worked.
Woodland Quarters is the Black community. That's the neighborhood that grew from the descendants of Woodland Plantation.
For Joy, owning a plantation is a way to upend the common narrative around these historic places. A narrative that often ignores slavery entirely, focusing only on the fancy homes and gardens of the planters.
And really what is the irony in all of this is plantations were Black spaces. They were Black spaces. My ancestors built it. My ancestors are still buried in those sugarcane fields. And so it's sacred space.
The Civil War upended the plantation system in Louisiana and across the South. Agricultural production slowed because, well, it's expensive to make sugar without slavery. Some plantations adopted new technology to stay in operation, while many others shut down. For Black people in the river parishes, the work of sugarcane stayed mostly the same from slavery to freedom. Land ownership remained largely in the hands of white planters. That left freed men and women little other choice but to work in the fields and live on Slave Row, just as they had before emancipation. At the Laura plantation, people worked the fields and lived in the slave cabins all the way until 1977. Owning a plantation was something Joy felt called to do. But it isn't just about the past. Joy has seen dozens of plantations get bulldozed and replaced by petrochemical plants. For her, saving the plantations that are left also means saving land from heavy industry.
The difference in one more plant coming is one more person getting cancer. The difference in one more plant coming is one more community that has been there for 300 years. One more community being completely wiped away. One more plant means the history that's foundational to the understanding, the building of this country, gone.
Joy has spent years fighting against the expansion of the plants in the corridor. She helped lead the effort to stop the construction of a giant grain export facility in her hometown. But more than just stopping industry, Joy wants to create more economic opportunities in the corridor that can compete with the plants. And she sees tourism, these plantations, as an integral part of charting a new future led by and for local people.
First of all, Black people need to be in the history, and they need to be benefiting from this tourism industry that was built off the backs of their ancestors. That turned into us fighting for the community, but at the same time fighting for a greener industry. We were fighting for our rights, for our history, and to be acknowledged. That's a strategy of change.
The economic, social, and political conditions that made the river parishes ideal for sugarcane are also what made this area ripe for petrochemicals. Both are industries that were cultivated, supported, and upheld by the state government. And today, on land that once grew acres of cane, now stand acres of pipes, tanks, and waste pits. Some of these plants make artificial sweeteners made from petrochemicals and exported all over the world, just like sugar was 200 years ago. To Joy, this transition from one industry to the next almost feels inevitable.
There's so much put into capitalism, economic development. It's so similar to plantation economy. And when you say, how could this happen? Like, I look at it face to face with the plantation economy. It's like, how could this not happen?
Like sugar, we all use petrochemicals. But also like sugar, only some of us bear the consequences of making it. Next time on The Corridor.
So it goes back pretty early, where the oil companies and later the chemical companies were buying plantations and then using that land for their facilities.
How Louisiana traded one industry for another.
The Corridor is presented by Threshold and Oracle Productions. Jaha Naila Avery is our reporter and host. Writing, mixing, and production by Erica Janik and Sam Moore. Music by Joy Clark and Todd Sikafus. I'm executive producer Amy Martin. Learn more and support the show at thresholdpodcast.org.